Team Rocket, RD on RocketNet, looking for confirmation your system is still go. Thermal.
Thermality's go.
AVI. Go. Flight software.
Flight software's go.
GNC.
GNC's go.
Payload.
Payload's go.
S1 prop.
Go.
S2 prop.
S2 prop is go.
Systems.
Go.
Copy all, thanks.
LCC on control room, we are go for takeoff.
Copy that, C.
LDCE on control room, we are go for terminal count.
Release. Release confirmed.
Newton 3 startup confirmed. Stage 1 burn nominal.
S-band lock for Baja TM, data is confirmed.
Mexico Alpha achieved. Stage 1 trajectory nominal.
Music to my ears, thanks.
Cosmic orbit base. Stage 1 burn is nominal, passing 120,000 feet.
Newton 3 shutdown confirmed.
Stage 7 brake fire's broken.
Stage 4 startup complete. S2 prop, stage 2 burn is nominal.
Downrange O'Higgins locked.
AOS and frame lock at Mauritius.
LD on control room. For those who haven't heard, we have a confirmation of all 7 satellites deployed.
All systems are good, they're coming back for land.
Copy, stepping up. It was a great day to go to space with everybody.
LC, Kelly 2, Cosmic Row is on the ground.
Welcome back, Cosmic Row.
Hello, welcome to Fix's Spacetime. In today's special video, I'm at Spaceport Cornwall, next to Cornwall Airport in Newquay. Behind me, we have the Virgin Orbit Launcher 1 prototype. And next to me is sat Ross, who is a business development manager here at Spaceport Cornwall, who I'll be interviewing today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now to our first question. Ross, can you tell me a bit about what you do and who you are at
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thanks very much for coming down. Thanks for visiting our exhibition here. So my name's Ross Hulbert. I'm the Business Development Manager for Spaceport Cornwall. And my role basically involves working with companies like Virgin Orbit on the space launch operations side. So first and foremost, this is a place where people will launch satellites into space. But it's also a site based at Cornwall Airport, Newquay, that we want to encourage businesses to locate here and have year-round activity, both on the space and the aerospace side. So the majority of my time is involved not doing things like this, but talking to people about taking facilities on site and doing other sort of activity. But this is the exciting stuff.
Oh, okay. Wow. What are you most interested in, space or aerospace?
Well, space is probably the more exciting part of it. Like there's so many developments going on at the moment, like every week it seems, you know, whether it's Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos, there's like really cool stuff happening, which is probably the most exciting time in 50 years. You know, like space launch was previously very expensive, didn't happen very often, whilst now you've got so many more people involved in it. You know, like it's a lot cheaper to get things into space. So, you know, while Richard Branson and these people are billionaires, their budgets really, compared to what NASA and people had back in the sort of 60s and 70s, are really quite minuscule. So I think we're quite lucky that they've decided to spend their money on getting into space. So, but aerospace is really exciting as well, and and very connected. And there's loads of really exciting things going on at the airport here, but in aerospace generally, whether it's unmanned systems or new types of propulsion technology. There's a lot of stuff with electrification of aircraft, people moving away from kerosene, using hydrogen. So it's both of them. A lot of the companies are involved in both spaces. It's really, really exciting. And I don't pretend to be an expert really on either. I just try and facilitate the conversations and try and ensure that Cornwall is involved as possible.
Oh, okay. Do you know yet what the first launch from Newquay Airport What, do you know what will that...
What will actually be on
yeah.
it? Well, so that's Virgin. So Virgin Orbit, they are responsible for finding the payload customer for what will go in. I mean, the capacity for Launcher 1 is about 350 kilograms of satellite payload into polar orbit. So that is what will go up. As far as what customers they're talking to, so it's a year from now really. Their first launch is going to be about sort of May or June next year. And we will have, as you'd expect from Virgin, being a quite exciting company, we're going to have a big 3-day festival. They're calling the launch Tribute. So the previous commercial one they did out of the States, they called Tubular Bells. That was Richard Branson's first record that he signed. So ours will be called Tribute. So it's supposed to be a tribute of UK space excellence. So I guess, yeah, as far as actually what will be in it, I mean, it won't be, you know, when Elon Musk did his first, well, when he did his demonstration, he put his Tesla into orbit.
Yeah.
So what exactly will be on that first launch, we don't know. But yeah, Virgin Orbit having those conversations at the moment. And in a year's time from now, we'll have done it. First one ever from UK soil, from Cornwall, and it'll be really exciting.
Yeah, wow. Can you tell me a bit about all the other spaceports in the UK, like Shetland?
Yeah, sure. So we are the UK's horizontal launch site, but we are part of a bigger process that the Department for Transport started and now is overseen by the UK Space Agency. So it's to try and identify locations in the UK that would be suitable for both vertical and horizontal launch. So there are a number of vertical launch spaceports in Scotland that are at various stages in their development. So neither of the main two places, Sutherland and Shetland, I don't think yet have actually started to build anything. Yeah. But they've got like a clear route to achieving that. You know, they've got the planning and they've overcome all those sort of issues. So we work really closely with Shetland, probably I think mainly because they couldn't be anywhere further away from Cornwall. So we think of it as like we bookend the country. So, you know, they're not even on the mainland, you know, they're an island you know, off the northern coast of Scotland. But they've got an exciting partnership with Lockheed Martin and also with Skyrora, whose exhibit we were looking at earlier. So we've got a really good relationship with them, but also with there's another horizontal launch spaceport in Scotland at Glasgow Prestwick Airport. Got a good relationship with them, and we all work really well together under this big Launch UK banner. So in Cornwall, this is Cornwall Airport Newquay, but it's not a Cornwall project. This is a national project, and the only way, you know, that we're going to achieve success is by all of us working together. So we're not in a space race against each other. So I don't take any particular joy if any of the other spaceports are having any difficulties, and we all sort of help and support each other. And we've got Shetland coming down to visit us in a few weeks, and then we want to go and reciprocate and go and visit them up there. Okay. So we're all working together, and yeah, we're all friends and all like working towards a common goal.
Okay, wow. Does Spaceport Cornwall's license allow unlimited launches, or do they have a limit to stick to per year? And if you haven't already got this license, what will you aim for?
Well, the license, so we are in any day now going to put our license application in. So it's now open for application. So we are going to be applying for our spaceport license, and Virgin Orbit will apply for their operator license. And we expect both those licenses to be granted by March next year, in time for us to do our first launch in May or June. So that actual license won't stipulate how many launches we can do, but our approval from Cornwall Council is capped at 12 launches a year. So we were discussing earlier, when we went through our democratic process to be approved, Cornwall had recently declared a climate emergency, and we were the first infrastructure project that went through that process after that climate emergency was declared. So we had to show what our carbon impact was likely to be. Because of course, although it's not a great carbon impact, it's still using a 747, it's still launching a rocket under its wing, which is then putting something into space, so there is clearly a carbon impact of that. So we have to show the steps that we're taking to mitigate that. So if we ever wanted to do more than 12 launches a year, we'd have to go through all that process again and submit all that evidence again to show that we'd kept all those promises that we said we'd do, and then only if Cornwall Council felt there was a compelling justification for why we could do that, and that we could do it, alongside, so Cornwall has an ambitious target to be carbon neutral by 2030. So if we are going to do more space launches, we have to comply with that target and ensure that we're not adding extra carbon onto Cornwall. So that's the only reason we're really capped.
Oh, okay. You're aiming for your launch license to be ready by next year when you launch. What would happen if it's still not?
Well, if we don't have it, we can't launch without it. But we're very confident that we're working with the CAA, who are the regulator for that, and there's no reason that it wouldn't be ready, because basically, we are already an airport. So a lot of the stuff that goes into the license is they have questions about what's the security protocol. How do you keep members of the public away from dangerous areas?
Yeah.
We're in an airside environment now. If we were to open those hangar doors, the runway is just there. So we already have all those protocols in place. So we're only really adding a very small part of activity to be a spaceport, whilst some of the vertical launch spaceports, which doesn't matter because they're going to launch later than us, so they've got more time. But at the moment, there's nothing there. So if they're making their licenses for how they'll keep members of the public away, they've got to start everything from scratch. So that might take 6 or 9 months for that process to go through. Whilst for us, everything else is already there. We're already an airport. We've already got an aerodrome manual with all of this information already in there. So it's of all the challenges we have, don't think necessarily that having the license delayed will really be one of them.
All right, okay. Do you think Spaceport Cornwall and Virgin Orbit will be selling passenger seats to view launches from Cosmic Girl?
Well, that would be nice, but unfortunately, Cosmic Girl, although it was a part of the Virgin Atlantic fleet, and it was called Cosmic Girl before it got to us as a space carrier craft, but all the seats have been taken out. There's nothing really on there apart from enough room for the pilot and the necessary people who are on there. So yeah, that would be a nice thing to think. If it was like a proper passenger aircraft, we could all sit there and watch it, but no, unfortunately not. But you will be able to come and view it from Cornwall, and as I said, we're going to have this big 3-day festival, so people will be able to come and view the launch from here, but not aboard Cosmic Girl, unfortunately.
All right, okay. Will Spaceport Cornwall only launch Launcher 1 for Virgin Orbit, or will you launch for other companies and providers as well? Yeah,
for other carriers as well. So like you see with the aircraft coming and going today, we've got many different aircraft operators here, and it's the same on the spaceport side. So Virgin Orbit have signed exclusively with us for their European operations, but we are open to speak to anybody else that we want. Within that, again, we can only have 12 launches a year. That's not 12 with Virgin and 12 with someone else. That's 12 in total. But we have an MOU with Sierra Space that we looked at the model for Dream Chaser earlier, and that could potentially see planned missions to Cornwall from 2025 onwards. And we're under NDA with other spaceflight developers that are working on technology. So yeah, we will. The hope will be that we'll have a whole range of space operators, horizontal launch space operators, operating out there spaceport here.
All right, okay. What type of satellites will Launcher 1 carry on board when it goes up to space?
So CubeSats, so small satellites, much smaller than the big geostationary satellites that we're used to seeing up in, these multi-billion-pound satellites. So these are much smaller, the size of anywhere from the size of like a trainer box to a washing machine. So those size, and they can perform a whole host of missions from, providing connectivity, internet connectivity, Earth observation, remote sensing. So that's the sort of satellites we're launching into low Earth orbit, which is much closer than geostationary.
All right, okay. Will Launcher 1 launch anything other than satellites, like experiments or something?
Yeah, it could do. So we've got conversations with some universities about scientific experiments going on. The big challenge that we have as far as, a lot of people, so the University of Exeter do a lot of stuff with SpaceX. They put worms onto SpaceX launches and then study what happens for, what are the gravitational effects. But in order to do those experiments, they need those worms back. Well, of course, our satellites go to space and they do not come back. So it depends if you can have enough sensors on these satellites for people to get the research while it's already in orbit. But yeah, that's the hope.
All right, okay. What's the reasoning for Spaceport Cornwall for Newquay Airport being chosen for Launcher 1?
Well, in the first instance, it was the size of the runway. So we're Cornwall Airport Newquay, but we're also RAS St Morgan. We have one of the longest runways in the country. So it's 2,744 metres long, which is extremely long, far longer than we need. Like, as an airport, we don't use anywhere near that amount of runway. But there's only a very small number of places in the country that have a runway of that length. So that was the eligible criteria. That's what got us in the game to be a spaceport. And then we're able to really offer a very cost-effective route for that first launch. So we're building a few facilities on site, which you saw as you came in, but we don't really need to build very much. And in real terms, it doesn't cost that much money. The UK at the moment has nowhere where they can launch satellites into space. And in order to get Cornwall Airport Newquay into a state where it can do that is £20 million, which might seem a lot, but some of the forecasts about what the global launch market's worth are like sort of £10 billion. So for the UK to be able to achieve space launch for £20 million is an amazing, cost-effective feat.
Oh, okay. How can the UK help with humans becoming a multi-planet species and going to live on the Moon and Mars? What can Launcher One and UK space companies help with that?
Well, some of this, so like a lot of the research that's going on, so like we spoke about the space worms at the University of Exeter, so a lot of the stuff about muscle atrophy has applications back here on Earth, but it also has applications for what would happen for people if they were to go onto Mars and colonize places like Mars. So yeah, there is. It's not that's not probably like the sole focus of what we're doing, but yeah, I mean, Elon Musk has made it very public that within his lifetime he wants to see people colonize Mars. So it's very exciting, but perhaps not really what we're doing here.
Okay. What are the long-term plans for Spaceport Cornwall?
Well, the long-term plans are in order. By this time next year, we'll have achieved the UK's first ever launch. And then after that, a lot of where my role is focused is to try and encourage as many businesses as possible to enter the space sector. So the UK Space Agency or the UK government have this target to achieve 10% of the world's space sector by 2030. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is by encouraging new people to enter the sector. So just the traditional companies getting bigger and getting more market share is not enough. So our long-term plan is to host as much activity as possible on here. So we've got our hardened aircraft shelters where we've done a lot of rocket testing. So we're going to do more rocket testing. We're speaking to companies on the aerospace side as well who are using new propulsion technologies so that they can use these facilities. We want to build more facilities on the business park and have companies locating there full-time. We're also building these other cluster of buildings called the Centre of Space Technologies, and we want to see businesses using those laboratories and R&D space. So the long-term plan is to have, within like sort of like, I don't know, say 5 years, if we were to have sort of 5 or 6 launches a year, lots of businesses all clustering around the business park, doing exciting stuff, employing young people coming out of our schools and colleges, because that's the other thing, we want to try and capture as much of this for Cornwall-based graduates and community as possible. That's why Cornwall Council has invested so ambitiously in the project. Yes, this is exciting for Cornwall and puts us on the global stage, but it's also about providing real opportunities for people that are here in Cornwall.
Yeah. What can Spaceport Cornwall bring to the local area, like extra revenue for small companies?
Yeah, so the targets for job creation, again, this is things that Cornwall Council are interested in. We're expecting to create 150 jobs here on site. That's not just on the Spaceport Cornwall team, that's all on the various site. But it's also forecast to create 240 jobs in what we call the supply chain. So smaller companies all around Cornwall that are providing products and services. And that could be anything. That could be really directly related to space and aerospace products, or it could be hotels or caterers.
Yeah.
We want as much economic value for Cornwall as possible that generated from this. And it's not about, when we spoke about Goonhilly and Avanti, who are based down at Goonhilly as well, 60 to 70% of their workforce are recruited from the local population here in Cornwall. So that's another sort of challenge we sometimes get. They say, well, are these companies just going to move here and bring their staff down? But there's clear evidence that when these companies come down here, they recruit locally. So that's really what we'd like to see.
Oh, okay. What kind of qualifications would you need to start working at Spaceport Cornwall?
Well, really a whole host of things. So I don't have any space-specific qualifications. And we will, of course, need people who are coming out of these top universities with all these astrophysics and all this sort of stuff. But I think a lot of my job is talking to people about trying to show how broad the space sector is. So you could be a marketeer, a salesperson, you could work in HR, you could be an artist. there's a huge amount of ways to get into the space sector which aren't just pure like hard maths and physics. But thankfully, if you do want to operate these spacecraft or build these spacecraft, you're all going to need those traditional engineering skills. And that's a real, that's what we hope to try and stimulate through this project as well. So when the original Apollo and Space Shuttle missions happened, you saw an amazing correlation between students who would then go on to study STEM skills at university and then go into these jobs. And that was without an outreach program. So that's one of the things we're trying to achieve with this exhibition. It's part of our broader education and outreach program to sort of like, inspire those like engineers to get into the industry, but also not put off people who are not engineering types, like myself. Like if I had people come in when I was your age, come into the school and saying you work in the space sector, I would have probably assumed that I couldn't work in the space sector because that wasn't what I was any good at. So that's the message really, is like there's no barrier. Like if you're excited about space and you want to work for a company, you'd almost certainly find a way to get into the space sector.
All right, okay, wow. What advice would you give to young people who are looking to work in the aerospace and space industry?
I think try and get as much experience as possible. Like, you contacted us about doing this interview and like we were keen to come and do it and support it. And I think the space sector is actually relatively small. Like, when we were talking about the different spaceports, we all know each other, we all support each other. So there's a huge amount of word of mouth. So if you, go in the holidays and gets a placement with one particular company, they'll recommend you to another company and recommend you to another company. And that's the way your career will work, but that could be equally the way you get into the space sector in the first place. So I wouldn't be, don't be put off about sending an email or following people on LinkedIn or social media. In my experience, people are very good at getting back to people and want to encourage people. So I would say definitely a great career to get into.
Thank you. That's all the questions I've got for you today. Thank you so much for letting me come down here for an interview. It's been brilliant looking around.
Thank you very much.
And being able to see the prototype of Launcher 1.
Brilliant, thank you.
And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, same to you, Felix. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great, no worries.